We're back, baby. Knicks basketball is back. Expectations have never been higher. I'm Bryce Gelman. Today, I'm going to be talking to SiriusXM NBA Radio's Bryce Geltzeiler, someone I've had on a bunch of times to talk the Knicks. He's going to give his thoughts on Tom Thibodeau and him going to Celtics practice. We're going to talk about Karl-Anthony Towns, his role in the offense, Mitchell Robinson, his injury, and more with Geltz. And stick around after Geltz and I's conversation. I'm going to get into my predictions for this upcoming season. Everything that's going to happen, my most pressing questions, what's going to happen with the Knicks offense, and more. Stick around for that. Without further ado, let's get right into it with Geltz. All right, and here he is, the man, the myth, the legend, Bryce Geltzeiler of SiriusXM NBA Radio. My favorite guest. I guess I could say that by default, but Geltz is my guy. He's the best when it comes to the Knicks. He's the best when it comes to the NBA. He's the host of NBA Weekend on Saturday mornings from 7 to 10 a.m. with Sam Mitchell. Again, he's the best. There's no one better to talk to about the Knicks. And here he is in all of his glory. Bryce Geltzeiler. What's up, Geltz?
What's up, Bryce? How we doing, buddy?
I'm great. And I want to say, I just preface this. We're going to talk about the Knicks season and your expectations, and we're just going to preview the whole season. But I got to start with this. Yesterday, the biggest news was Tom Thibodeau was at Celtics practice, supposedly invited by Joe Mazzulla to talk to the team about what went wrong for them against the Knicks, what Tom Thibodeau saw against the Celtics in that series. What the hell? What do we make of that?
Supposedly? No, he was invited. What do you think, Tom Thibodeau, Bryce, is knocking on training camp doors, waiting for somebody to let him in? He was invited there. He went there. Joe Mazzulla asked him to talk. Listen, it's not such a far connection for him to talk to Joe Mazzulla. 2 seasons ago, when the Boston Celtics won an NBA championship, lead consultant to Joe Mazzulla and Brad Stevens was Jeff Van Gundy. Jeff Van Gundy and Tom Thibodeau are still the best of friends. So for Tom to be there, plus, can we also talk about the fact that in 2008, Tom Thibodeau was the lead assistant on the Celtics championship team? He has roots with Boston. Joe Mazzulla was really smart to ask him to come. And you know what? He owes the Knicks nothing at this point. They're contractually obligated to pay him $30 million because they asked him not to coach the team anymore. And this thought that somehow Tom's supposed to leave quietly, but still maintain this loyalty to the Knicks to not go talk to other places was a big news last week when Tom ended up at St. Bonaventure's Pro Day with Adrian Wojnarowski, and he was watching kids there. No, of course not. It's big news because the Knicks are bent out of shape because Tom, let them know let Boston know what they did wrong and what he exploited last year. Listen, if the Boston Celtics this season are a threat to the Knicks have been a massive disappointment. They're not going to have Jason Tatum the whole year. There's too much being made over this stuff, but there's a little bit of an entitlement coming out of the Knicks, the fans, and the media that somehow Tom's not supposed to go spend some time with another organization if they can bring him in and he can show them that he can add some value. Maybe Joe Mazzulla wants Tom to be his lead assistant. Should he turn down an opportunity to coach because it's going to offend Knick fans and Knick media? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely, utterly absurd. He was invited there. He went there. It may not be the last team he visits, and it may not be the last time he helps the Celtics out. And if Knick fans are so worried about Tom Thibodeau coaching and the Knicks and their management team so worried about Tom Thibodeau with the Celtics, maybe they shouldn't have fired him in the first place.
That's fair. And I don't think I subscribe to the same belief of a lot of people on Knicks Twitter, a lot of the media members. He's allowed to do whatever the hell he wants. The Knicks fired him. He doesn't know the Knicks anything, to your credit. And I think he's a basketball lifer, Geltz. He can't stay away from the game. We know this. We've known this for years. He might be the most dedicated person to the game of basketball in the world. I don't think that's hyperbole to say. He doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a wife. He has dedicated his entire life to the game of basketball. Can't stay away. It's like an addiction for him. It is what it is.
Yeah,
not
Bryce,
a big deal for me.
Yeah, Bryce. There's tons of armchair fans. You say that, and you're correct. You still wanted him fired, and there's tons of armchair fans
but that
that
doesn't,
sit there and want to know that you do and want to tell him how they could do the job better. Zach Lowe said something when Tom Thibodeau was fired. Zach Lowe, the Ringer, and it was very, very smart, and I never forgot it. He said, any objection that anyone wants to bring to Tom Thibodeau on something he should have done differently, he will have 6 reasons, okay, and 6 justifications, statistic, quantitative, qualitative, on why he did it that way. So whether you agreed or disagreed, it's fine. This guy's a lifer, and he's a heck of a lot more qualified than any of us in the media are sitting here and that talk about it.
I don't disagree, but it doesn't mean that I don't think he was the right coach for the Knicks. I don't
Oh, he was
think
a
that
red
he
coach for the
was.
Knicks. And you and I
That's
will,
my
you and
opinion.
I
We're
will,
gonna agree to disagree
you and
on that.
I don't
We're
even
gonna
agree to disagree, but let's
could.
probably move on.
Oh,
I think we're
I
better
do.
off moving
We could
forward.
do 45 minutes on that, but we're not going to because he was fired 4 months ago. And tell that to Frank Isola. So
No,
let's move on.
listen, Frank's right. Frank's
He's
not
right,
wrong
but
to
he
keep
was
Tom's
fired.
name
It's not
out
going to
there. So
change.
what? It's
He's not
bottom
going to
line is
change.
his name should still be out there. Frank's not trying to change anything. He's just trying to make sure that everybody understands that Tom was done wrong, and Tom was done wrong.
We understand Geltz. He's been hammering that point home for months now. It's been four
And
and
he
a
can
half months.
continue
Get
to hammer
over
it
it.
home. Keep going. Welcome to Frank. He will never be over it.
If the Knicks fail to meet their expectations and don't get to the point where they did last year with Tom Thibodeau, he could say whatever the hell he wants. But as of right now,
He can right now. They made a conference final for the first time in 25 years.
Wait and see.
Now.
Let's wait and see before we continue to hammer this home. Let's move on.
Here's
no
what I
more
am
of
to
this.
say. Before we move on, I got one more thing to say. This is
Okay.
what I am going to say. Okay. It is entirely possible that Tom Thibodeau should not have been fired. The Knicks did him dirty, and he's the best coach possible for this team. And for Mike Brown to be a good choice and someone that can come in and do a good job with this team. Both of those things can be true. Now let's move on.
I agree with that. But let's move on here. So Kat made some comments, and I'm just trying to focus on the latest news. Kat made some comments yesterday, essentially saying this is exactly what he said. He was asked about his potential in the Knicks' new offense under Mike Brown, and he said, and I quote, "Honestly, I don't know, but we're figuring it out." What do you make of Kat's comments yesterday?
This is why you can't retire the Thibodeau conversation, okay? Because what's happening right now with the Knicks, and I don't think it's going to be a permanent state of affairs at all, but there appears to be a push from Mike Brown and maybe those above him that they want to turn this Knick team, specifically the Knick offense, into the anti-Tom offense. And to me, I think that's absolutely the worst possible idea. It almost feels like they're trying to put a system in place that justifies the firing of Thibodeau. And that's why I do think it's not going to be a story that goes away. It's going to be an ongoing story. And here's my point. We've heard Mike Brown talk a ton about we have to play faster. We have to play with more pace. We have to push the ball more. And then even to the point of throwing Mikal Bridges' name as being prominent in that because of the fact that he is fast and is a speed player and can help push the ball. Now, that's also a narrative to try to justify the fact they traded 5 first-round picks for him, and any of those 5 first-round picks could be attractive and going to get Giannis when he's available. But that's a different conversation for a different day. But there's definitely narratives that are being pushed. Part of this speedball narrative that's being pushed revolves some around Bridges. Here's the problem with it. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is the perfect coach. If I had one major criticism of him offensively last year and how he ran this team is I don't think enough of the offense ran through Towns, period. I think a lot more of the offense should have run through Towns. It would have relieved Brunson of some burden. It would have given Towns more of an opportunity to dominate offensively, which is what he's best at, both inside and outside. It would have created more space for Brunson and everybody else out there, including Bridges, if they ran more offense through Karl Towns. To me, that was the big mistake Tom made last year offensively. Now this year they're talking about playing faster. So Bryce, I put the question back on you. Is playing faster something that allows Karl Towns more touches and more offense to run through him?
That's a valid question. 100%. It's something that there's obviously a dichotomy between my interest in seeing Karl-Anthony Towns more involved in the offense and also wanting to see the Knicks play fast. And I think it's a valid concern, valid criticism of the current Knicks way of thinking. But I'm
going to make it easy for you, Bryce. I'm going to make it easy for you, Bryce. You can't have it both ways.
No, that's
Towns
fair.
will not get more touches if you play faster, period.
But you can also have an offense where, let's say Josh Hart comes into the game. That's when you switch the offense. And I do understand that, it's hard to differentiate between different offensive sets and different offensive schemes within a certain game. But I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibility, Geltz. And I want to bring this up because
you have to have an identity.
You could, of course, but there's sometimes the Knicks had an identity last year, but they did revert into giving the ball to Jalen Brunson time and time again, and that became their Achilles heel at times. And you can't disagree with that.
And
I know you agree with that.
Whose fault was that?
It could be Brunson. It could be Tom Thibodeau for allowing it to happen.
It was on Jalen Brunson. It was on Tom Thibodeau, and it was on his father. That's who it was on. His father was the lead assistant. Did you see anybody else whispering in Tom Thibodeau's ears through the course of games other than Rick Brunson? The answer is no. You didn't see anybody do it. Go back, all right, and watch the Indiana series. All right? I saw a number through 5 games of the Indiana series. And think about how many high screens Carl Towns set for Jalen Brunson. The number, and I don't quote me on this number. Do you know the amount of times off those high screens? And by the way, over the first 5 games, there was an excess of 25 high screens that Carl Towns set for Jalen Brunson. Do you know how
Yeah.
many times
Yep.
Carl Towns was passed the basketball by Brunson off those high screens in the first 5 games of the Indiana
It was
series?
like 5, right?
How about two?
Yeah. Yeah. It was bad.
Two,
It was bad.
two. So again, I don't think Tom had it wrong with them playing slower. They have slow tempo personnel. It's okay. They have really good slow tempo personnel. You just have to lean into what you have. And this is my worry for this Knicks team right now. Just because Tom did it doesn't make it bad. But there's now this push to justify the firing of Tom. Now, I will say this, and I feel good about this. All right. Mike Brown is the kind of coach that he will try something. And if it is not working, he will turn around and stick his middle finger up at anybody telling him to do something different and do it his way. And that's where I think the Knicks, they thought Mike Brown's going to be a malleable guy. He's not going to be. Mike's there to win basketball games. And in the end, there's a very, very good reason that Mike Brown put one of his own, Chris Gent, as the associate head coach next to him on this team to help him. He needs his own guy there so he can enforce what he wants to do and not have to worry about pushback from the end of the bench. Keep in mind, you have 3 holdover assistants from last year's staff: Darren Erman, Maurice Cheeks, and Jalen Brunson's father, Rick. Okay, Mike Brown needs to be insulated from all of that. And I think that Chris Gent's going to help him do that. But with all that said, Brown's got to do it the way he sees fit. And right now, the one thing you worry about so much with the Knicks is all these different voices that believe they're entitled to input. Right now, at this early stage in training camp, they're all getting it. As we get into the season, I believe, knowing Mike Brown the way I do, knowing the strength of his personality, that I think that those voices are going to be blocked out, and Mike's going to do it in the way that he sees fit.
Yeah, I mean, I look at what we were talking about before, just a couple of minutes ago, and the fact that the Knicks are trying to play faster, and then there was a point made about from Stephon Bondi, and I think it's fair, but at the same time, like we're talking about the preseason, but in the preseason after Mike Brown pushed playing fast as one of the main pillars of this Knicks team, the Knicks had a pace that ranked 31st in the NBA. I don't look too much into that because
that's going to be tough
preseason.
because there's only 30 teams.
Yeah, I don't know how that's. I don't know. Oh no, because he ranked it. Bondi's tweet, he ranked behind the Australian team that played.
That
yes,
makes sense.
yes,
Okay.
yes. Now that I remember his tweet. All right, but let's talk about this. Another thing that's kind of in the news right now, and something that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think that there's an underlying issue or something that the Knicks aren't telling us about in full. And that's Mitchell Robinson, because you've had the entire offseason to get him in game. I mean, he's been in game shape since he returned from his injury later on in the year in the regular season last year. But he's had the entire offseason to train, to get into the condition that he needs to be going into the season. And we know that the Knicks are going to load manage him. We know that the training staff will be on top of that. But Geltz, you hear before the first game of the season tomorrow night against the Cavs that he might not play because of load management. What the hell? What's going on with that? What do you make of this?
Bryce, I wish I had answers. The Knicks aren't always forthright with the media, or most of the time they're not. So you don't really know. No one really talks to the media. So you really don't. It's there. You have no clue what's going to happen. Maybe, maybe something's sore on him. And listen, they're looking over the course of a long season. They need him healthy. They want him healthy. It's for that. And that's the other thing. You're going to start Mitchell Robinson and you want to play fast? I mean, some of this is just so counterintuitive that it's borderline insane. Now, when it comes to Robinson, the Knicks aren't always going to be upfront about what's going on with him. Last year, they didn't let you know he'd be out the amount of time that he was out. So I think this is something that's part and parcel.
Well, they
of what
did. They did apply for that. They did apply for that exception or whatever with the NBA, asking for his money back because they thought there was a chance that he might be out the entire season.
After how long, right? Like they wanted to make, like last year in the offseason, like he may start the season. They were not forthright with information, and they're not going to be forthright with information. My guess is that there's been some kind of setback with Robinson, and they're just being careful. That's my opinion. The other thing is, I think Huff Porty's look pretty good here in camp,
Yeah.
so I don't think they're panicked about having to have Robinson load manage and sit some games and not play back to backs. I think they're confident that Huff Porty can suck up some minutes here. So again, not anything I would panic about, but this is also what you deal with the Knicks. Leon Rose hasn't spoken to the media in 4 years. All right. Mike Brown's going to give you very, very generic answers when he speaks to the media. It's the Knicks just aren't forthright with information. It is what it is. So in this case with Robinson, I think it's fair to assume that there's been some kind of minor setback. I would assume that we see him on the floor sometime in the first week of the season.
I'd hope so. I'd hope so. This isn't a situation like last year where he was out after they did say that he was going to be back sooner than he actually was. But another thing that I wanted to touch on with you, it is something that has me excited for this upcoming season. And it's the fact that the Knicks finally acquired some depth pieces. Last year, they didn't have a bench. A lot of criticism was given towards Top Thibodeau for not playing the bench. Turns out they didn't have a bench. Turns out that, DeLon Wright and Landry Shamet didn't have a deal up until maybe a month and a half ago, whatever it was, before the Knicks ended up bringing him back. DeLon Wright ended up, I don't even know where he ended up, but he also didn't have a contract up until a few weeks ago. So obviously last year they didn't have any depth. Now they have depth. They acquired Jordan Clarkson. They acquired Gershon Yabusele. What will both their roles be on this team?
Well, Yabusele is going to play a lot. Yabusele is going to play. He'll play a lot with Towns at times. I'm sure he'll play in bench units with Robinson. Yabusele is going to give you a more of a conventional type of four. He is a mountain of a man. He is an ox. He's only
He's
about
massive.
6'7" and
He's
a
like
half, but
200,
he's huge.
280 pounds. It's crazy.
He is, but he is a bowling ball. He will run people over. He's a really good player. He's going to be really helpful to this Knick team. And frankly, if Tom had him last year, he would have played his bench more. Yabusele's that type of guy. Here's what I'm going to say about Jordan Clarkson. I think Knick fans and Knicks media have to put the brakes on the Jordan Clarkson expectations a little bit. There's a reason he was available for a league minimum. This guy is a world-class chucker. He never met a shot he didn't like. He doesn't pass. He doesn't guard. So the thing is with Jordan Clarkson, if he's hitting shots, he'll help you. If he's missing shots, he kills you. So I think for the Knicks, you're going to have some games where Clarkson gets hot. He'll heat up. He'll look good. He'll have other games. He comes in the first 4 times he touches the ball. He misses 3 shots. 2 of them are really bad ones. Mike Brown's going to sit him on the bench and not move him from there. One important item about Jordan Clarkson here that is important to understand. A lot of what he does is his skill set has a lot of overlap with Deuce McBride's skill set. The difference is McBride's better at it. McBride's a better defensive player. He's a better shooter. Maybe he doesn't get his own shot as well as Clarkson gets his own shot, but I'd much rather have McBride taking a catch and shoot 3 than Jordan Clarkson. And again, he'll guard his position. So I think for Clarkson, it sounded exciting because the Clarkson of 3 years ago that went out for Utah and lit some teams up is the one that Knick fans are envisioning. I just don't think that's the version of Clarkson that they're getting. Clarkson was horrific for the Jazz last year. Maybe you say Jazz were terrible. They were tanking. All that's true. Maybe he'll be a little bit better in a better situation. I can buy that. But to think that he's going to be some kind of game in and game out solution, I'm not sure. If he is still with the Knicks when the playoffs start, it would not surprise me if he ends up, if the Knicks go with an 8-man rotation, that if he's on the outside looking into that rotation.
What I will say about that is the fact that lower volume could change his efficiency. I think with
There's
how
no
much
such
volume
thing with him, Bryce.
with
There's
how
no
much
such thing as
I
lower volume.
I get that.
He
I
just
get that.
shoots.
But his minutes are going to go down, which in turn is going to decrease his volume, and also playing against a ball dominant guy in Jalen Brunson, and also playing with Karl Anthony Towns in the lineup. Like inevitably, he's not the focal point in the lineup like he was last year with the Jazz, in the last 3 or 4 years with the Jazz. Like I think by default, his volume. I get that. I get that, but there's no risk.
Shoot.
There's no the risk reward. There's a lot more reward than the risk. He's on a veteran's minimum contract.
Correct.
If he's not playing well, he's going to get pulled. He'll be put on the bench. If he's got a problem with it, then the Knicks could easily dispose of his contract, trade him away for a 2nd-round pick, or whatever.
No.
Another team is
First of all,
he
one of the
probably
reasons
don't
they
even
got him
won't
for
even
a
get
league
a
minimum
second round
is
pick.
because no one wanted him.
That's
No
fair.
one, no one wanted him. And I'm not beating up the Knicks on bringing him in because at a league minimum, you're absolutely right. It's a very, very low risk maneuver. But he probably isn't going to play as much as people think. And when he does play, he's going to take a lot of shots. And if he's not making those shots, there's no use for him on the floor. That's the bottom line. He reminds me of a low budget version of what Jamal Crawford was at the end of his career, where unless he was making shots, he was useless because Clarkson can't guard anybody and he's not
Yeah.
interested in guarding anybody. When you talk about lower volume, the only thing that's going to be lower volume for him is lower minutes because when he's in the game, he's going to take shots. He doesn't care if it's Brunson, Towns. He doesn't care if it's Michael Jordan. He is shooting the ball because that's what he does. That's who he is. And in some ways, when he's hot, that's a great thing. But when he's not hitting shots, he will destroy your team. And that's where Mike Brown's going to have to walk a little bit of a tightrope with him and thread a needle to be able to use him when he can be helpful and sense at an early stage when he's not helpful and get him out of the game.
All right, I got two more questions for you. First one, I think everyone would agree with the fact that and sentiment that the Knicks' biggest impediment in the Eastern Conference and just their expectations in general is the Cleveland Cavaliers. How do the Knicks match up with the Cavs this year after going 0-4 against them in the regular season?
You
last year?
know, I think the Knicks, I don't think the Knicks match up badly with the Cavaliers, but I'm going to go back to something that you asked me earlier that I think is important. The Knicks have to have Mitchell Robinson to match up well with the
Yep.
Cavaliers. That's
Yep.
the bottom line because if they don't have Mitchell Robinson, Allen and Mobley are too big and too much. They just are. If they match up two bigs to two bigs, Mitchell Robinson 3 years ago in the playoffs pushed around Allen and Mobley in a way that won the Knicks the series.
He was the MVP that series, straight up
He was
MVP.
straight up, straight up. They cannot handle him on the offensive glass. They struggle to score inside against him. He was a mountain of a man. Played fantastic. The Knicks need that to be able to beat the Cavs this year. If they don't have Mitchell Robinson, they're not going to beat them. It's that tough. Listen, I was at Cavs training camp last week. The vibes there are absolutely unbelievable. They
Yep.
have a quiet confidence about them. There is a togetherness in that group. There's a collective belief on who they could be. Kenny Atkinson got all these guys liking each other and pulling in the right direction. The Cavs are deep. They're very good. Listen, I picked the Knicks to go to the finals because I believe
You
that Robinson's going to be healthy. I did. I picked the Knicks to
No,
go to the
you took the
finals.
words right out of my mouth because the next question I was going to ask you and what I wanted to end with was how far do the Knicks go this season?
Finals.
I guess
Denver, New
you
York
just
final.
answered that.
I have Denver beating the Knicks in
I
the
have that
final.
too. I have that too.
I think, listen, I think this is an excellent Knicks team. I think Mike Brown's going to be a very good coach for this team. This Knicks team has depth the team last year did not have. I think you'll see a more diverse offense as long as they involve Towns more. And let's face it, if they can have Mitchell Robinson for 55, 60 games that he plays in the regular season and healthy in the playoffs, I think he's a major force for them. And I think he helps them to be able to get through the Cavaliers. I think, listen, the East is watered down and it's very, very weak. It's two teams and it's everybody else. I happen to like Milwaukee. I don't love Milwaukee. I don't love Orlando like a lot of people love Orlando. I think Atlanta will be better. I don't think Atlanta is going to be as good as people think Atlanta is going to be. I'm not there on a lot of these teams. Detroit can be dangerous, but again, Jaden Ivey starting the season hurt. That's a vital player for them. That doesn't help what they're doing. So it's a weak East. In a weak East, this really benefits this Knicks team. Listen, there's something to be said this year in the Eastern Conference for continuity, for bringing back a group where it worked well together last year. And the Knicks have gone ahead and done that. The Cavs have gone ahead and done that. They'll have DeAndre Hunter for an entire season, even though he's starting the season hurt, but they'll have him for the majority of the season. So I still like the Knicks in that matchup, counting on Robinson being on the floor. So I'll take the Knicks going to the finals by the slimmest of margins, Bryce.
I just hate that that's the same prediction that I have for the season, but
What are you
I'm
gonna do?
gonna get to that on my own. But Geltz, it's always a pleasure. You're the best. And check out Geltz on NBA Weekend on SiriusXM NBA Radio on Saturday mornings from 7 to 10 with Sam Mitchell. Geltz, it's always a pleasure to have you join me. We'll talk soon.
Keep up the great work, Bryce. Keep going, buddy. You're doing great, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
All right, that was Brian Geltzeiler, one of the best. He's got some insight into the Knicks that I think not many other people have, and he doesn't get the credit for it. But anytime he comes on with me, anytime he talks to the Knicks, you got to listen because he knows what he's talking about. But let's get right into it. I want to get into my predictions, everything that I'm looking forward to, the most pressing questions. We did cover a few of those with Geltz, but I've got some on my own, and I want to get to those. And just I'm gonna get. I know I just gave up my prediction, but I want to talk about why I feel like the Knicks are going to make the finals, and I'm going to get all into that. But I want to focus on the most pressing questions for me going into the season for the Knicks. And the first one is kind of what we touched on with Geltz, and that's what the offense is going to look like under Mike Brown. Mike Brown with the Sacramento Kings led them to the playoffs for the first time in over 10 years. It was the longest playoff drought in all of sports. I think it was like 20 years at that point. And now it's the Jets. That's a different story. I digress. But he ended a drought that was, I think it was an improbable comeback for that Kings team to get to that point. No one expected it to happen. Mike Brown did that. And for that team, one of its calling cards under Mike Brown was good pace. They moved the ball quickly. They took a lot of threes, and they got a lot of shots up. And that's something that Mike Brown is trying to replicate here with the Knicks. But then, of course, something that I brought up earlier, the Knicks did not have a good amount of pace, 30th in the NBA during the preseason. I understand it's the preseason. You can't put that much stock into it, but it remains true nonetheless. And it looks like we're going to have to keep an eye on that going forward. If that's a concern, if the Knicks are doing the exact opposite of what they said they're going to do, that will be a major concern for me and other Knicks fans out there. So that I think is far and away the biggest question. How is Mike Brown going to optimize the offensive talent for the Knicks? You saw last year, there were issues with, and Geltz touched on this, is the camaraderie between Karl-Anthony Towns and between Jalen Brunson. As he said, through the first 5 games of that Pacers series, Jalen Brunson only passed the ball to Karl-Anthony Towns twice. That is almost impossible. Hard to do. To maximize the Knicks' offensive talents, it is going to be imperative that Jalen Brunson and Cat establish a 2-man game. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that. The Knicks went out and traded for Karl-Anthony Towns. They gave up Julius Randle. They gave up Dante DiVincenzo, who set the Knicks record for threes made in a year, and was essential for the Knicks getting to the point the year before that they got to. And they got Karl-Anthony Towns. And what did Tom Thibodeau do with Karl-Anthony Towns to maximize his talents? Nothing. He did not let the offense run through Cat. He didn't prioritize a pick and pop, a pick and roll game between Jalen Brunson and himself. That was not the case for the Knicks last year. And it's imperative that they change that they stray away from that offensive scheme that Tom Thibodeau ran. So I look at that. That's a massive factor here for the Knicks' success in 2025, 2026. Another thing with the Knicks that's very important is the three-point shooting. And that's increasing the volume to match the league average in the NBA. This is a different era of NBA basketball. It's a massive gripe that a bunch of people have about the game and about the league. And the Knicks last year, they ranked in the bottom half of the league. They ranked 27th in three-pointers attempted per game. In the preseason, the Knicks attempted 222 threes throughout their preseason games, which ranked 6th in the NBA. So that translated to the preseason. The directive from Mike Brown to his team, take more threes. That translated. The pace, on the other hand, that did not. But again, it's the preseason. We're going to take that with a grain of salt. The three-point shooting, we're also going to take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's important to watch how this offense grows, how they develop throughout the year. This is a different coach. There are different guys off the bench. The fact of the matter is, the starting lineup remains the same. They have a certain level of continuity dating back to the start of last season that they will continue to attempt to grow on. The offense is the most important part of this Knicks team. You could say defense. I get it. Defense wins championships. With that starting lineup, with that bench, the Knicks will win it all if they maximize their offensive talents. If they do something that worked in the past, that Tom Thibodeau refrained from going to more than a small amount of the time, it is a tiny sample size. Let me just preface that. The Knicks' best lineup last year consisted of Deuce McBride inserted into Josh Hart's place. That starting lineup that played more minutes by far than any team in the NBA simply didn't work when it mattered the most. The spacing was non-existent. The ball movement, also non-existent. That level of cohesiveness that you were looking for in a championship team was not there. And that lineup with Deuce McBride, again, it was a small sample size, but it was far and away the best lineup that the Knicks put out there last year. And with Mitchell Robinson's injury, the uncertainty surrounding his start to this season, potentially not playing opening night against the Cavs, I look at Deuce McBride as being that guy to slot into the starting line. And I hope and I pray that that player, when Mitchell Robinson is not playing in back-to-backs, let's say he misses a couple of weeks, which it seems like an inevitability with Mitchell Robinson over the course of his last, 5-6 years in the league, ever since he came into the league. And I hope that Josh Hart is not that guy to slot into the starting lineup. We saw time and time and time again the Knicks falter, unable to maximize the spacing that they intended to maximize when they traded for Karl-Anthony Towns with Josh Hart in the lineup, playing 37, 38 minutes a game, playing top 3 most minutes in the NBA throughout the season. It was inexcusable to trade for Karl-Anthony Towns and to not utilize him and to not gain the advantage that he provided the Knicks. And he will continue to provide them going forward. And that's spacing. That's why they traded Julius Randle. Karl-Anthony Towns afforded them the spacing that they needed. The NBA is a copycat league. The Knicks saw what the Celtics did the year before with a 5-out offense, a lot of movement, a lot of spacing. The Knicks traded for the guy who was considered the best three-point shooting big man in NBA history. And you know what they did? Nothing. Because they continued, Tom Thibodeau continued to insist on playing Josh Hart. And I can go on and on and on when it comes to Josh Hart and my gripes with him, the type of player that he is. I do understand that he's a Swiss Army knife and his ability to push the pace, to score in transition, and his ability to rebound is unmatched by any player, combine all of those qualities together than any player in the NBA. No one provides all of that together. And I'm not trying to discredit the type of player that Josh Hart is. What I am trying to say, in order for the Knicks to maximize their offensive capabilities, Josh Hart cannot play more than 20 to 25 minutes a game. Can't happen. And Deuce McBride needs to start for the Knicks. On a game-by-game basis, of course. When Mitch makes more sense to slide into the starting lineup, when you need him to be the big man patrolling the paint, when you don't trust Karl-Anthony Towns to, let's say, match up against a Nikola Jokic, Mitch needs to start. Don't get me wrong. I'm not telling you that Mitchell Robinson isn't potentially the biggest X factor for the Knicks this season. And from the time they drafted him, as the longest tenured Knick, ever since he came onto the Knicks, he has been a force to be reckoned with on the defensive end, on the offensive glass. And you heard Geltz say it just a few minutes ago. If the Knicks want to beat the Cavaliers, if they want to match up against the Cavs as well as they possibly can, Mitchell Robinson needs to be healthy. He was the X factor and the MVP in the first round in the 2023 playoffs against the Cavs. So I get it. You'll have the dichotomy between playing one or the other. That is how the Knicks maximize their offensive capabilities, by experimenting, seeing what works, knowing what works, going into a playoff run. So when you get to that point, you can expend all those options. And that is something Tom Thibodeau did not do last year by insisting on playing the starters as many minutes as they played throughout the season. I know I just did that whole long-winded answer, and it's kind of like all-encompassing, but I do think it's important, and it all ties in together of how the Knicks are going to maximize their offensive capabilities. And going off of that is how the Knicks will move the ball. There was that viral clip of the Knicks ball movement from practice, and there's a lot to be made of that, and yada, yada, yada. But it has shown up in the stat sheet throughout the course of the preseason. And let me just repeat what I said before. Take this with a grain of salt. Since in the regular season, there's a chance that the Knicks didn't show anything that they're going to run in the regular season, just like NFL teams do in the preseason, because they don't want to put anything on tape for the season. There's good likelihood of that. But I look at their assist numbers from game to game. They consistently went up from game to game. 19 in the first game, 21, 22, 24, 28, respectively, over the next 4 games. I think no matter what type of offensive schemes, and whether or not they're real or not, whether or not they'll translate to the regular season, the Knicks will continue to move the ball as well as they have. And I put more stock into that than anything else I discussed over this preseason. And any of those takeaways. This season will come down to health, of course, as it does for any team across any sport, on any level of each sport. So it is going to come down to health, and it's going to come down to how the offense, the talents on the offensive end, are maximized. You want to see more from Mikal Bridges. You want to see OG Anunoby continue to build off of what we've seen offensively over the past 2 years, past year and a half with him on the Knicks. There are a lot of moving parts of this offense. We saw at the start of last season, particularly in that first game against the Celtics, albeit the issues are more on the defensive end. The offense looked convoluted. It was a mess. And it had a lot of people concerned about what the future held for the Knicks in the regular season. And I think those concerns were not dispelled. They weren't. Because it still took the Knicks a long time to get into a rhythm offensively. Yeah, they had a really solid offensive rating last year, top 10 in the league. But when it came to beating the best teams in the league, the Cavs, the Celtics, and the Thunder, the Knicks were 0-10 against those teams. They struggled offensively. And I understand against the Thunder, one of the best defensive teams in NBA history. Cavs weren't known last year for having their net rating was amazing. Defensively, they were really good, but that wasn't their calling card. And there were still, you could still expose Garland. You could still expose Donovan Mitchell. Their back end of the defense, of course, defensive player of the year in Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, also one of the best defensive centers in the league. And it's no easy task to have success offensively against that team specifically. The Knicks need to just keep building on this. They need consistent three-point shooting from Mikal Bridges. That's a must-have. He needs to be a better catch and shoot three-point shooter. You can't see him only be able to hit shots off the fade or whatever, not off the dribble, but catch and shoot, moving threes in rhythm. He's got to get into rhythm on, standing catch and shoot threes, specifically in the corner, where he's excelled so much over the course of his career. So the offense is the biggest catalyst this season. There's no doubt in my mind. I trust OG Anunoby. I trust Mikal Bridges to take a step up defensively. Mikal Bridges is one of the best off-ball defenders in the NBA. His length, his knack for the ball, getting his hand on the ball, is unmatched by the majority of the NBA. And of course, you have top 3 perimeter defender and also can hold his own in the paint in OG Anunoby. And you got Deuce McBride, who's a really good point of attack defender. The defense will be able to hold its own. Mike Brown is the defensive specialist. This team was coached by Tom Thibodeau last year. I don't think that his teachings and his way of coaching is not just going to leave this team, no matter who the coach is. So the defense is less of a concern for me, but let's get into it. My predictions, because I did kind of reveal my prediction because Geltz had the exact same one as me. I think the Knicks make the finals. I do. They get to the not to the promised land. They get close to experiencing the exhilaration of winning a championship for the first time since the ending of Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals. And Game 6 too, with the Stark shot that was blocked by Hakeem Olajuwon at the end of that game, that could have given the Knicks their first championship in 21 years. But now it's been 32 years since that moment where the Knicks realistically came close. And you could say last year, but the Knicks didn't make the finals. They didn't. This is the most complete Knicks roster in 50 plus years. And a lot of people say, well, what about the 90s Knicks? They got pieced by Michael Jordan out of the playoffs every single year. Look at that roster on paper. John Starks, your number 2 option offensively. Come on. Charles Smith is your small forward. What are we doing? This team is 10 times more talented than that team. Not hyperbole. But kind of. You catch my drift. It's day and night. I think the Knicks get to the finals. I think they lose in 6 or 7. And I think it's a crushing, heartbreaking blow for the Knicks to come that close to winning the championship for the first time in, 30 plus years. But there are expectations with this team that haven't been felt maybe since the 70s. I think that when Michael Jordan retired from the game of basketball after the 1993 season, of course, the Knicks saw their window open. They got to the finals for the first time in a very long time. They didn't win. They didn't win. The East is wide open now again. And this time the roster is amazing. From top to bottom. If they stay healthy, there isn't any reason why they shouldn't get to the finals. And again, Mitchell Robinson needs to be healthy in the playoffs. If the Knicks eventually face off against the Cavs, They'll lose the series unless Mitch is playing. And if Mitch is playing, I think the Knicks are going to handle the Cavs, not with ease, but as easily as you can handle a team that is amazing offensively. There's a lot of pressure on this team. And with high expectations comes the likelihood of being let down on a monumental scale. And that could happen this year. It could. But as Rex Ryan said, and I'm not quoting this directly, like, you want high expectations. You don't want to go into a season with low expectations. No one expecting you to do anything. And you'd rather be in this position. I don't think there's any Knicks fan who says, oh, I wish people, were sleeping on us. Well, no one's sleeping on the Knicks. They've got the fourth or fifth or whatever the hell, third, fourth best chance to win the NBA Finals, the sports books. And they don't have to face the gauntlet in the Western Conference. The East, again, is wide open. Jason Tatum out. Tyrese Halliburton out. There's no better opportunity since the 1970s. I think the Knicks make the finals. And I think they lose. Who knows, man? There's no predicting. There isn't, even though I did get the winner of the finals last year. I was high on the Thunder the entire year. That didn't take a rocket scientist to acknowledge their greatness. Whatever. I digress. With all the stuff that's going on with the Giants, everything that happened with the Yankees, this is our one saving grace. It's now or never. There may not be another opportunity the Knicks have with this core that's as good as this year's. And let's see what they bring. Let's see how they fare. The expectations cannot be higher. And the opportunity for disappointment and the ensuing depression also could not be higher. I'm excited. I really need this in my life. Like, I need the Knicks to win it all. I do. I do anything to get it. I do. And I'm sure every person watching this, if you're a Knicks fan, you'd feel the exact same way. But that'll do it. I appreciate everyone for tuning in, sticking with this as long as you did. If you did, if you enjoyed this, be sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at Bryce Gelman. A lot of good content coming your way when it comes to the Knicks. And the Giants, the season isn't exactly over. Like, still have Jackson Dart. Should be 5-2, but instead they're 2-5. I digress. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And, man, let's go Knicks. Let's freaking go, man.